North London is buzzing with speculation. In a summer that had promised quiet consolidation, Tottenham Hotspur have flipped the script once again. After a chaotic but Europa-winning season, Ange Postecoglou is out, and in his place, the name now echoing through Spurs fans' forums, back pages, and the boardroom is Thomas Frank. Now, for many, this is a curious link. A manager who's only coached Denmark youth teams and Brøndby for 3 years and never led a so-called Big Six side, and whose Brentford's team just finished 10th in the Premier League. But to others, it is a strategic masterstroke, an appointment based on structure, data, culture, and cohesion. So I guess the reason why you're watching this video is, who is Thomas Frank? What is it about this Danish coach that has Spurs prepared to trigger a reported £10 million release clause? And perhaps more importantly, if he does make that leap, how could his unique tactical philosophy translate from the community club of Brentford to the expectation-laden cauldron of Tottenham Hotspur? So in today's video, we will be breaking down Thomas Frank's playing style, we'll analyse his most used formations and the set-piece magic that it comes with, and the project and how he could reshape Tottenham's current squad into a more disciplined, adaptable force. We will also tackle the big question: is this really a sideways move for Spurs, or could it be the cleverest gamble that they have made in years? So let's be clear. I don't believe Thomas Frank was the obvious name on the shortlist, and I'm sure if you asked Tottenham fans, were Ange Postecoglou to get sacked, would he be the manager to take over? I'm pretty sure the answer would be no, but here he is. And if you think about it, it's totally understandable from a Spurs fan's point of view. Ultimately, this is a club that have had the likes of Antonio Conte, Jose Mourinho. They wanted the likes of Julian Nagelsmann, Luis Enrique, managers with silverware, swagger, and high-profile reputations. So why in 2025 are Spurs turning to a man who's never managed in a European competition before, except for the qualifying stages of the Europa League? The answer lies in both what Tottenham need and what Thomas Frank offers. After a season of emotional highs and frustrating lows under Ange Postecoglou, Spurs' campaign ended in paradox. Yes, they won the Europa League. They finally got their hands on some silverware after such a long time without one, but domestically, finishing 17th in the Premier League is absolutely embarrassing and a disgrace to Tottenham Hotspur. Of course, injuries have played their part for Spurs this season. It hasn't been easy, but the inconsistent tactical executions has probably led Daniel Levy to make a bold call: hit reset again. And this is probably where Thomas Frank comes in. He's not flashy, he doesn't dominate press conferences, but behind the calm exterior is a manager known for 3 things: tactical clarity, emotional intelligence, and overperformance on a budget. At Brentford, he built a Premier League identity from scratch. His teams were organised, disciplined, tactically flexible, and grounded in data-driven recruitment. Players such as Mbeumo or Johan Visser, 2 players who have done excellent in the Premier League since Ivan Toney left the football club this season, are probably 2 players who are in demand for transfers this summer. Cristian Romero is another player who, relatively unknown to fans of the Premier League, he's now been able to turn these kind of players into cohesive outfits. Another key factor: relationships. Frank has a long-standing connection with Tottenham's new technical director, Johan Lange. The two worked closely together during their time at Lyngby and FC Copenhagen. With Lange now pushing for long-term planning and data-led recruitment, Frank does fit that vision perfectly. So this move for Spurs isn't just about Premier League survival, it's about a culture reset at Tottenham. They're not chasing another superstar name, they're chasing a coach who can build identity, harmony, and results, even without an inflated war chest. To understand why Thomas Frank might thrive at Spurs, you have to understand his tactical blueprint, built at Brentford over 6 methodical, quietly innovative seasons. Unlike managers who rigidly stick to one system, Thomas Frank is a tactical chameleon. His formations evolved constantly, not because of his indecision, but because of his adaptability to players, injuries, and opponent profiles. His Brentford side consistently rotated between a 4-3-3, 3-5-2, and 4-2-3-1, depending on match context and availability. In possession, Frank's Brentford often resembled a 4-3-3, but when building from the back, it morphed into a 3-2-5 shape. The fullback would tuck in, while the other fullback would push up to stretch width, creating space for dynamic underlaps. But here's what is unique. Brentford didn't always look to dominate the ball. They ranked bottom 6 in possession across every season in the Premier League. Instead, they picked their pressing moments intelligently. Frank's sides mastered situational pressing in zones and moments, often triggered when an opponent played backwards or made a heavy touch. Rather than suffocating possession like an Postecoglou, Brentford used compactness and triggers to create chaos. Think more of an Atletico Madrid than a Manchester City. Now, taking a look at Brentford's midfield, it's all about balance and control, not really flair. Typically built around Cristian Romero as a single pivot or part of a double pivot, Frank's midfield trio worked in asymmetry. One would drop deep to aid the build-up, while the other advanced into half spaces. Now, of course, when you look at Brentford and the way that they play, it was never just possession for possession's sake, it was progression with purpose. Brentford rarely overcommitted bodies forward unless there was a clear overload. Alongside Janelt, you would have players like Yegor Yarmolenko who would help to break lines with his vertical passings, or you'd have a player like Damsgaard who would help to exploit the space which would be vacated by fullbacks by pulling defenders with smart off-the-ball movement. For the first time in the Premier League era, Brentford had 3 players get to 10 Premier League goals: Bryan Mbeumo, Yohan Wissa and Kevin Schade. They would often operate like hybrid forwards, not pure wingers, but second strikers who attack the channels. Thomas Frank encourages wide players to drift in, while wingbacks would provide the width. And of course, with Ivan Toney leaving and in his absence, Wissa, who would drop deep into the midfield to link play and then surge forward to attack second balls, he became the most important part of that forward line. And it's this level of fluidity which made Brentford dangerous on the break, and they would be unpredictable in the final third entries. One of the most underappreciated aspects of Frank's tactical legacy is his set-piece mastery. Brentford employed a specialist set-piece coach and often dedicated full training sessions to dead ball routines. In the 22-23 season, over 30% of their goals came from set pieces. That's quite a lot. They used long throw-ins like corner kicks, overloaded zones during corners, and even rehearsed choreographed kickoff routines. In short, Thomas Frank's Brentford was never about dominating games, it was about controlling the margins, when to press, when to sit, when to attack transitions, and how to exploit set pieces. And this mastery of moments, not possession, is what might make him perfectly suited for a club like Tottenham, who are looking to rediscover identity without relying on heavy spending or superstar egos. Of course, one of the big questions, if Thomas Frank were to come in as the Spurs manager, would be, would he actually come in to transform Tottenham Hotspur? Would he stick with the same Brentford blueprint, or would he tweak it to fit a bigger, more technically gifted squad? Would he sign some of his former players to fit in within what he's trying to do because they know what he wants from his team? I think the answer might lie somewhere in between. Thomas Frank, he can adapt, but he never abandons his own principles, and those principles could unlock Tottenham's potential in unexpected ways. Now, he hasn't officially become the manager of Tottenham and he hasn't signed any players, but here is a lineup which consists of a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, depending on how you want to kind of read it. I feel that Tottenham could play with 3 at the back, with players like Micky van der Veen, Cristian Romero, even Dragusin back there, Danzo. So they have enough players to be able to play a few formations, which I think for Thomas Frank would be really, really good, because he's going to bring a little bit more stability in terms of the way that they play. And I think Spurs might just have better players than a Brentford anyway. What you can see is that it's quite similar to his Brentford team in terms of the roles that the players are going to be able to play. So the fullbacks, Porro or Udogie, high-flying wingbacks, their roles are not necessarily going to change. As I mentioned before, with the centre-backs, he might get in a player like De Winter, potentially. In midfield, you've got the likes of Basuma, who could potentially play that Norgard role. Again, alongside him, players like Bentancur and James Maddison, who's, of course, going to be the creative hub in that kind of Damsgaard role, receiving the ball between the lines and then trying to feed the forward line. Could they change up the type of attackers that they've got, could they get an Mbeumo? You know, they've already got a Kulusevski, they've got a Solanke, they've got a Heung-min Son if he were to stay. They have similar type players there already, Brennan Johnson as well. So again, hybrid wide forwards, you know, a rotating number 9 role. I think this might be something that Tottenham potentially, and of course we never really and truly know, but this might be a really, really good turnout for Spurs. When you do look at it on the face of it, the potential appointment isn't just about tactics, it is about the identity of Spurs, and I think that has been missing a little bit when it does come to Tottenham Hotspur. They've spent the last few years swinging between philosophies, whether it's Mourinho, whether it's to Nuno, to Ange, you know, the gung-ho kind of high line. What they've lacked is that continuity, a project, and it's something that they're going to need to stick behind for the next few seasons. Thomas Frank is a project manager. He builds from the ground up. He improves players. He empowers staff, and he doesn't demand 200 million, you know, for windows to stay competitive. There's also a cultural fit. Frank is pragmatic, collaborative, and emotionally intelligent. That might be exactly what this fractured Spurs squad needs after such a poor season, which of course ended on a high with the Europa League, but in totality it was a very, very poor season by their standards. Frank is not a rock star manager, he's a club builder. So let's wait and see. Thomas Frank, he does offer Spurs a fresh blueprint, tactically versatile, set piece sharp, value driven, and with a leader who connects. In his hands, Tottenham could flip a sideways step into their next rise. The summer awaits. Can Frank get the dream job and deliver? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. People, do you think this would be a good move for Spurs? Do you think it's a good move for Thomas Frank? And what do you think is going to happen next for Spurs? Where can Thomas Frank potentially take this team? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll catch you guys soon. Peace.